Coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, recruit. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
What's up, DFS Army? Welcome back. Last week was a smashing success for DFS, NFL, across the board, Yahoo, DraftKings, especially DraftKings, FanDuel, you name it. So we're going to take a look back real quick at the week that was for Yahoo, especially in cash games. And then we are going to look forward at the week 2 slate, main slate. All right, let's do it. So as far as Yahoo and cash games last week, we pretty much identified the main players to target. Jalen Hurts with his rushing floor at $33, Jonathan Taylor at $40. Saquon Barkley was very underpriced at $18 and absolutely smashed. Justin Jefferson was the top play on the slate at $31. Michael Pittman, again, wide receiver 1 usage, elite target share in that offense at $23. Should have been priced much higher, and you see who he actually is this week. Rashad Bateman at $16, pretty good value. Probably, not as big as the days you expected, but for getting a touchdown and I believe 50, 60 yards receiving at $16, we will take that all day. That was the core of your team, and then you easily hit the cash line if you sprinkled in some value plays like Romeo Doubs and Jahan Dotson. So we will look for the same criteria as always in constructing our cash lineups. That's why we look for high floor plays, chalk plays, and just some great value plays that you can sprinkle in a fantasy points per dollar basis. And of course, in our tournaments, we look to get off that chalk and get different elsewhere. So that said, let's take a look. Now, if you go over to dfsarmy.com, we actually do have Yahoo projections. So we're still a week or two away from having Yahoo in the optimizer. But the good thing is you can get the salary price, you can get the actual projections, DFS Army's projections, and you can get fantasy points per dollar basis. So with the exception of being able to build lineups for Yahoo in the optimizer, you can pretty much do everything else currently. So let's take a look at the quarterbacks real quick as we kind of look for the top guys. Now, this isn't going to show all the guys that are on the main slate because we got Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes in that night game. So as far the Thursday night game, so as far as the main slate, we are looking. Let's see, quarterbacks. We're looking for guys like Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford. These are going to be the guys that are on the main slate, and you look right away from a fantasy points per dollar perspective, some guys that really stand out. Lamar Jackson, one of the top guys, he's got 0.71 fantasy points per dollar because Yahoo, they do the $200. So, these numbers are going to be a little bit different. But again, you're still looking for the top fantasy points per dollar. He's projected at 22 points. Some other guys you might be looking at, Derek Carr, specifically in stacks. Carr, 0.71, same thing really as Lamar Jackson, 20 points. He's going to be quite a bit cheaper. He's only $29 as opposed to Lamar's 31. If you're looking to pay all the way up, that's going to be Josh Allen. That's going to be a showdown type slate. So really you're looking kind of in the $30 and $20 range as far as the quarterbacks. Now, some of the running backs on the slate that are really standing out. Saquon Barkley, he's obviously priced up this week. He's right where he should be, right behind Christian McCaffrey, right behind Jonathan Taylor. He looked very explosive. He got elite volume last week. He also got a lot of work in the passing game, I believe about 7 targets. So, he was in the Millie Maker winning lineup. Shout out to Rapid Fire XD for having that play in his lineup. Absolutely smashed. And Barkley priced up, but still really good value. I mean, by the end of the year, we wouldn't be looking at him like $38, like $40. So fantasy points per dollar, he is definitely higher than McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor, as he's 0.57. A couple other guys that I really like, Joe Mixon. They're going against Dallas in what should be really a positive game script for Joe Mixon. Dallas, they're without Dak Prescott. They got Cooper Rush in this week. Burrow and the Bengals, they didn't look very good last week. They scored points, but they lost the game. So they're looking to bounce back. Mixon is a guy who was in the nuts 6 times last year. He's getting a lot of volume. I believe, about 20 carries. He's also getting some passing work. So he's a guy you definitely would consider in all formats this week. Couple other guys that I'm really looking at. Javonte Williams, he got a lot of play last week against Seattle. So he got about 12 targets. He also split carries with Melvin Gordon. He had the one bad fumble. Otherwise, it would have been a really good night for him. And he was averaging about 6 yards per carry. So there's a good chance that the Broncos will continue to attack Houston on the ground this week because they gave up a lot of yards last week to Jonathan Taylor. So Javonte Williams could be a guy that you're looking to play at $23. We also got Leonard Fournette. I like him this week. 0.72 fantasy points per dollar. So one of the top guys as well. And, they provide a little bit of salary relief from the Barclays, the Jonathan Taylors, Christian McCaffreys, and whatnot. And then let's take a look at the wide receivers. Now, Devontae Adams was unbelievable last week in the amount of volume that he got. So he got 50% target share. I really like Devontae to continue this week in what is the top scoring game on the slate, Las Vegas for Arizona. Probably not going to get 50%, but even if he gets, 35, 40%, you're going to be happy with that. And really, he should have had a much bigger week. I believe he scored 25 points on Yahoo, but he should have had a much bigger week had, Derek Carr been a little better. Cooper Kupp picked up right where he left off. He is a top price guy on the slate. Obviously, the highest projected over at DFSarmy.com for a reason, because Cooper Kupp is Mr. Consistent. So, in cash games, he is very playable. Obviously, in tournaments, he really needs to have a ceiling game to pay off his salary, but you would certainly take that. So Pittman was a guy that I was really on. I'm not sure that I'm going to be playing him in cash now unless he's a full go because he did sit out practice again on Thursday. Couple guys I really like. In fact, I'll show you my cash lineup here in a minute. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he got a lot of targets again last week. He's $23. 13 projected points. He's lower priced and he is getting, volume, like target share volume, like a guy who is priced about $30. So he's a guy. Christian Kirk as well is someone I'm definitely going to be on this week. And we will get into that a little bit more as well. As far as the tight ends, one guy I really like for a payoff option is Mark Andrews. Now, the touchdowns went to Devin Duvernay and Rashad Bateman last week, but Mark Andrews, he's still getting the most target share in the offense. I believe it was over 25%. He's projected, as far as the main slate, the top projected tight end going against Miami. So with a little competition as far as elite tight ends this week, Andrews would be my top guy that I would be looking to target if you're looking to pay up at tight end. It is a highly volatile roster position. So as far as tight end and defense, I normally like to pay down. My pay down option this week, in fact, we got to go a little further down the board, I believe, is Freiermuth. So Freiermuth is coming in 12. Yeah. $12 going against New England, and he just gets a lot of targets. I believe he got 7 or 8 targets. No, he got 10 targets last week. So that's a guy, if you're going to pay down a little bit, I feel like he's a really good value. $12, projected at 7 fantasy points, but 12 targets. You like that. You like the opportunities for, getting touchdowns and whatnot. So Freiermuth is a guy I really like this week at tight end. So let's go over and each week at dfsarmy.com, if podcasts, if you don't always have time for podcasts and you just want to read through something real quick, I post the articles for the plays that I like over at dfsarmy.com. So the guy that I probably will be playing this week, if I'm not playing Lamar, is Trey Lance. Now, I believe he is going to have a little bit of a better rushing floor than he showed last week against the Bears. There was a lot of rain. It was his first game. It can get better. So at $27, I like him. Now, if I find a little more value on the slate and I can pay up for Lamar Jackson, he would certainly be my top guy. He just really didn't have a lot of yards last week, and he still had 21 points because he had 3 touchdowns. So from a rushing standpoint and a overall yardage standpoint, there's a lot more that he can, produce every week. And I certainly think he will. So that said, I'm probably going to roll with Trey Lance this week just because I like the lineup construction with him. Saquon Barkley is the guy that I'm going to play just based on price. If I'm cramming in one stud, I'm going to do a guy who I still think is a little underpriced, was Saquon Barkley. And he's certainly going to get a lot of volume. Now, some guys I didn't mention before that I do like this week. Number 2, Antonio Gibson. Now, he got 14 rushing attempts, 8 targets in week 1. That is enough volume, really what we're looking for floor in our cash game running backs. He's $18, so he's some pretty good value because you can't have all $30 and $20 guys. You gotta put in some teens there. So I do like him. He's one of the highest fantasy points per dollar backs on the slate at 0.73. And another guy, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, he just was non-existent. I believe he played, he got like 3 carries. He clearly isn't recovered fully from his Achilles injury, or at least not along in his development as far as getting full starter carries again. So Henderson, on the other hand, he got 13 rushing attempts and 5 targets versus Buffalo. The Rams, they're 10-point favorites. They're heavy favorites against Atlanta. So this favors to be a positive game script for Henderson to rush a lot. That's what we're looking for. We want floor. And I believe, now we'll go to DFS Army Chalkboard. I believe Henderson and Barkley are the top 2 ownership projected standpoints. Now, of course, this is over on DraftKings, but these are what the sharp players are on. We're typically going to want to follow chalk in our cash games because we're not trying to beat, everyone on the field. We're only trying to beat half the field. So this provides a little bit of safety net by playing the chalk. So Saquon Barkley, Henderson, and then Javonte, certainly mentioned him. Probably where I will be going in cash. Now, from the wide receivers, again, I mentioned Cooper Kupp. I mentioned Devontae Adams. I mentioned Pittman, who I like if he plays. Again, he went from $23 to $31. He's probably still is a little bit underpriced for what his role may be. He may be like higher, like Debo and Devontae when it's all said and done by the end of the season. And then Amon St. Brown and Christian Kirk. So Christian Kirk, the Jaguars signed him this year. He got a 31% target share in Jacksonville's offense during week 1. He's only $17. So really priced considering his elite target share. Exactly what you're looking for in cash games from a player priced at $17. You're going to need a couple players like that to pay up. So mentioned Andrews, also mentioned Pat Freiermuth. Now, Zach Ertz, he could see a lot of usage as he's already scored a touchdown and 2-point conversion last week. He was a little hobbled. Arizona, they're banged up with all their pass catchers. So especially if Rondale Moore doesn't play, they were throwing to Dortch last week. Like who are these guys they're throwing to? They need help. Ertz is the guy they traded for. So he's definitely playable in all formats at $17. Now, the defenses that I like, if I'm doing a pay up jock option, Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas, they didn't look good. Now they got Cooper Rush. He's in, because Dak's going to miss some time. Cooper Rush, he is a guy who, is going on a team that just didn't look very good last week, going against the defending AFC champs who are looking to bounce back. This is a 7-point spread. If the Cowboys are behind and forced to throw, I like the Bengals to potentially turn the ball over and do some scoring. So that would be my pay up option. If I'm going all the way down, there's a couple, games you can really look at. Number 1, the New York Jets. Now it's the New York Jets, right? But they're going against the Browns. They're going against Jacoby Brissett. He's a backup. If turns into where you're slinging the ball all over the field because, maybe it's a higher paced game. Maybe it's going back and forth a little bit. He could provide an interception or two. He could take a couple sacks. So really from your defense, you're just asking them not to take a dump in their helmet, right? So, if they get a few points and they're minimally priced, that's fine. We just don't want 0 points. We just don't want negatively priced points. Negative points, but the defenses, they are a very high variance. So you're trying to be on the positive side of variance. So that's a pay down option. The other one would be the Raiders going against Arizona. Kyler Murray and that offense just didn't look very good last week. So I could see that, them kind of paying off on their salary for a low priced defense. Now, when I look at my tournament stacks of the week, I am all about fading the noise for the week one overreactions. Okay. So what we had last week, we had Russell Wilson on the Broncos. Now, Nathaniel Hackett has made a ton of mistakes as a first-time head coach. First mistake he made was not playing his players in the preseason. Tim Patrick tore his ACL, I believe, in training camp. I believe was a little bit overreaction. They decided they're not going to play their players in preseason. Well, what happened? The Broncos came out. They looked rusty. There were some timing issues with some throws. They just didn't look that good. Wilson, I thought he looked pretty good. He was a little off at times, but it's an emotional game. It's a hostile environment. I'm expecting them to bounce back this week. They are at home in Denver in the Mile High City going against the Houston Texans. So it's perfect bounce back game. The Broncos paid Russell Wilson $250 million. They also had signed Cortland Sutton to a deal last year. They had signed Tim Patrick. So this is a team that is invested heavily in their passing offense. They will throw the ball. And I'm looking at ownership. Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, they're all going to be pretty low owned. Okay. You're looking at about 10% each. So that is a risk I'm willing to take in stacks. And also because of the stacking price, they're quite cheap. So Judy's only $18. Wilson's $30. So that stack together is $48, but you can get Cortland Sutton as well. Another $23. So I do like some team stacks, and, I might do a game stack or two and just bring it back with Brandon Cooks. So, where you're looking for upside, you're looking for stacking prices that are cheaper, and you are also looking for ownership to be somewhat low. So when we look at some of the top leverage plays that I like over on Yahoo for the week, we're looking for low owned players who have the ability to go off, gain us leverage against the field. So you're going to have obviously your core players, your Devontae Adams, your Cooper Kupps, your Saquon Barkleys. These are guys that you might be willing to eat some chalk because they have the ceiling and, they have the kind of a floor that you need as well to score enough points to win. So you're going to need those guys, but how are you going to get different? So Tom Brady is one guy who I'm looking at this week because he's low owned and also because his wide receivers are low owned. And there's also low owned bring back options in that game. Now, Brady hasn't done very well against New Orleans in the past, which is why nobody's on him, which is why I like it. Okay. So I'm willing to play studs that are low owned in that one scenario. Maybe it's not very likely to happen, but it could still happen. This is the type of play you want in a GPP. So Tom Brady and his options, which we'll get to in a minute. Jeff Wilson's another guy. We got Eli Mitchell out. We got Jeff Wilson in. Maybe it'll be Jordan Mason. Maybe Zebo Samuel will get more carries. Maybe, Trey Lance will take the carries, more of the bulk of carries. We don't know. And because of that, Jeff Wilson's ownership is at 8%. And I like that. He's $16. He's 8%. I'm willing to take a chance. And that's at a position where you don't have to necessarily correlate it. You can just play Jeff Wilson as a one-off because running backs, they don't need to be correlated to win large field GPPs. Antonio Gibson, I mentioned I have some interest in my cash lineup with him. That said, I certainly will play him in tournaments if he's going to come in at 8% owned. Again, DFS Army Rapid Fire XD, Million Maker winner, longtime subscriber VIP. He won $1 million this past week playing Antonio Gibson at low ownership. He was about 10%. So I'll do it again. I'll be willing to play that. Maybe I'll win the baller over at Yahoo. So we'll see. James Robinson, I totally was all about playing ETN just based on the way that Cam Akers and that Darrell Henderson situation went with Cam Akers coming off his Achilles. But Robinson is not human, apparently, because he looked great last week. And yet he's coming in at low ownership again. So 3%, that's a guy I'm willing to take a chance on. You want studs who can score, over 25, 30 points, who are low owned. T. Higgins, I mentioned earlier, Mixon. I'm definitely down to have some Burrow, Mixon, Higgins stacks. Those have took the Millie Maker before. He had a concussion last week, so if he plays, he's a full go. We won't have to worry about lingering issues like you do with hamstrings and ankles and whatnot. But a game where since he is heavily favored, I do like some team stack options with Higgins in it at 8%. Pittman, we'll see how that goes if he plays. Him practicing might be why his ownership is low. So we'll continue to monitor that. Curtis Samuel, 4 rushing attempts, 11 targets, 70 yards, and a touchdown last week. He's healthy. They'll use him a lot as long as he, is healthy. So certainly planning to ride that as long as he is healthy, because with Curtis Samuel, we never know. I mentioned Brady earlier with his stacking options. One of the reasons I'm interested in a Brady stack is because of Michael Thomas on the other side at 6% ownership. He saw 25% target share last week on his way to 2 touchdowns. His ownership remains low. So I like those stacking options. Again, if you got Mike Evans on Lattimore on Mike Evans, that is, been a problem for Mike Evans in the past. So maybe instead of playing Mike Evans, you play Julio Jones, who looked good last week. You bring it back with a Michael Thomas. Julio Jones had 5 targets for 69 yards. He certainly could have had more of a role he can with Godwin potentially out. So if Julio goes this week, I like Julio. Also have some consideration for Russell Gage as well, even if Julio doesn't go. So, I will have some variations of those stacks. So those are some stacks I like. Now let's go over to Yahoo real quick. And what I'm going to do is just build kind of a cash, what I'm thinking with my cash, kind of show you where I'm at. So I like, as I mentioned, I like Saquon Barkley. I like Trey Lance. I am thinking about Javonte Williams this week, because even if, Russell Wilson and Judy or Sutton, one of the two, have a big week, I could see the Broncos getting ahead of the Texans quite a bit. And that said, Javonte is using the passing game. He looks like the better back than Gordon, and I'm willing to take the risk or take the chance that, he could have a big week. He's good priced, and he is, looking over at the chalkboard, he is one of the highest projected ownership standpoint plays. So like some Javonte, like I said, I'm all over Devontae Adams this week. I also like Christian Kirk and some Amon St. Brown. Again, these are guys that have a lot of floor, right? We know Devontae Adams has a lot of floor. He got 50% target share. Amon St. Brown, he's over 25%. Christian Kirk, he's over 25%. So, couple cheaper plays here mixed in with Devontae, but again, a lot of volume, a lot of floor. As far as tight end, I like Freiermuth, and, let's see how many targets he got. Look at his game log. I believe it's 10 receptions. Yeah, he got 5 receptions, 10 targets. So he's a guy I like. And then I did mention Darrell Henderson, just based on him pretty much being the starter in a positive game script. So let's say, him and Cam do split carries this week. They both can get a lot of carries if this game goes the way that Vegas odd makers think it's going to go. And then as far as defense, we got $12 left. So, what do you like as far as defense? Seattle going against San Fran. I don't like my defense going against my quarterback, so I'm probably not playing that. Again, I don't like Houston on the road versus Denver. Detroit at Washington. That's I could see that. Wentz wrong. That's happened many times. Wentz throwing interceptions. So I like that. Arizona, Las Vegas is one of the I believe this is the highest projected game total on the slate. So Detroit at Washington probably makes a little more sense than going with Vegas. Again, you could go with the Jets versus Cleveland, Jacoby Brissett. Don't like Jacksonville at Indy, and don't like Atlanta. So lowest I would probably go is the Jets as far as that matchup. But, spend the extra dollar, take the Lions. This is probably what I'm going to do in cash this week. So good luck in cash. I will break this down each and every week, of course. And then we have this article over at dfsarmy.com. So keep an eye on this. Also follow me on Twitter. I have it posted here as well, at FantasyFling on Twitter. If you have any questions, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, any Yahoo specific questions, definitely give me a holler. But yeah, keep an eye out for our podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Do all the YouTube things, of course. And we will see you next week.